The morning started like any other Tuesday on Earth. People were drinking their coffee, kids were getting ready for school, and everyone was just living their normal lives. Then everything changed in a single moment that nobody saw coming. Exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, every screen on Earth went black. Your phone, your computer, your TV, even those digital billboards on the highway. Everything just stopped working for about 3 seconds. Then they all turned on at once, showing the same terrifying image. A massive alien ship floated in space, so big it made Earth's moon look like a marble. The ship was completely black, like it was eating the light around it. Behind it, hundreds. More ships stretched into the darkness, each one bigger than any city on Earth. Then a voice spoke. It wasn't human, that much was obvious. The words sounded cold and mechanical, like they were being translated by a computer that didn't understand emotions. People of Earth. I am Admiral Yakmor of the Corvani Galactic Empire. Your planet has been selected for integration into our territory. You have exactly 72 standard hours to surrender unconditionally. Lay down all weapons. Cease all resistance. Prepare for occupation. This is your only warning. Failure to comply will result in complete planetary sterilization. The message repeated 3 times in every language on Earth. Then the screens went back to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Within minutes, every news station was going crazy. People were calling their families. Governments were holding emergency meetings. And social media was exploding with theories and panic. Some people thought it was a joke. Others were already digging bunkers in their backyards. But in a secret facility buried 3 miles under the Rocky Mountains, the reaction was very different. Commander Jinwoo sat at a table surrounded by screens showing the alien fleet. He looked calm, almost bored. His assistant, Captain Minho, was checking messages on a tablet that definitely wasn't available in any store. Well, they finally showed up, Jinwoo said, taking a sip of his coffee. Took them longer than we expected. Should I activate Protocol 7? Minho asked. Not yet. Let's see what the surface world does first. This could be entertaining. Dr. Soyoung walked into the room carrying a thick folder. The quantum gates are ready, Commander. We can relocate the entire surface population in 12 hours if needed, but honestly, I don't think we'll need to. On the surface, world leaders were panicking. The President of the United States was on a conference call with every other major leader, and nobody had any good ideas. The military was calculating how many nuclear weapons it would take to damage even one alien ship. The answer wasn't encouraging. We need to try diplomatic contact, someone suggested. With what? They didn't give us a phone number, another voice replied. What nobody knew was that similar conversations were happening in secret bunkers all over the world. Places that didn't officially exist, filled with people who had been preparing for this exact moment for decades. In a facility under the Pacific Ocean, General Wu Jin was reviewing tactical reports. Their formation is exactly what we predicted. Standard Imperial intimidation pattern. Should we send our response now? Asked Colonel Jisoo. No, let them wait. Let them wonder why the primitive humans aren't begging for mercy. The alien Admiral Yakmor was indeed wondering exactly that. From his command ship, he watched Earth through advanced sensors. Usually, when the Empire delivered an ultimatum, the target planet's communications exploded with desperate messages. Pleas for mercy, offers of tribute, attempts at negotiation, something. But Earth had gone completely quiet. Status report, Yakmor demanded. No response from the planet, Admiral. All their communication networks are still active, but they're not using them to contact us. Are they preparing defenses? Unknown, sir. Our sensors are detecting some unusual energy readings, but nothing that looks like weapons. It's almost like they're moving things underground. Yakmor had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. He'd seen every possible reaction to Imperial ultimatums, fear, anger, desperation, even attempted bribery. But never silence. Never. This complete lack of response. It was unsettling. On Earth, the moving underground was exactly what was happening, but not in the way the aliens thought. Entire cities were being evacuated through tunnels that shouldn't exist, using technology that wasn't supposed to be invented yet. The Corvani Empire had given Earth one warning: expecting the usual terror and submission. What they got instead was something they'd never encountered before, a species that treated a galactic superpower's ultimatum like a mildly interesting news story. Time was running out, and both sides were preparing for what came next. But only one side knew what was really about to happen. 48 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum, and Earth still hadn't responded. Up on the surface, news channels were running non-stop coverage of the crisis. Experts were debating whether humanity should surrender or fight back with nuclear weapons. Religious leaders were holding prayer services. Some people were looting stores, others were spending time with their families, and a few were actually throwing alien-themed parties because, as one college student put it, if we're all gonna die, might as well have fun. But 3 miles underground, in a command center that officially didn't exist, the mood was completely different. General Wu Jin stood in front of a massive holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots marked every alien ship. And there were a lot of them, but he wasn't looking worried. If anything, he seemed satisfied. Status report, people, how are we looking? Engineer Tai Hyung was monitoring power systems that belonged in science fiction movies. All fusion reactors are at full capacity, sir. The stealth field is holding perfectly. As far as their sensors know, we're just a bunch of scared humans, hiding in caves. Good. What about our little surprise packages? Dr. Hyejin looked up from a workstation covered in devices that seemed to bend light around themselves. The phase shift weapons are calibrated and ready. Their shields are designed to stop normal matter and energy. These babies work on a completely different principle. It'll be like their defenses don't even exist. Colonel Jisoo was coordinating with other secret facilities around the world. Pacific Command reports all underwater bases are operational. The European underground network is fully active. Even the Antarctic research stations are online and ready. Antarctic research stations? Lieutenant Sun Ho asked. He was new to this level of clearance and still getting used to learning that half the world wasn't what it seemed. Wu Jin chuckled. Son, we've been preparing for this day since 1947. Did you really think we were just studying penguins down there? The truth was, humanity had been expecting this visit for decades, not from the Corvani specifically, but from someone like them. Earth's governments had been secretly preparing, building underground cities, developing impossible technology, and training for a war most people didn't even know was coming. Sir, Jisoo said, checking her communications panel, we're getting reports from our deep space monitoring stations. The aliens are getting nervous. They keep scanning Earth with stronger sensors, but our stealth technology is holding. On the alien flagship, Admiral Yakmor was indeed getting nervous. In his long career of conquest, he'd never seen anything like this. Usually, primitive species either surrendered immediately or made desperate last-minute attacks with their crude weapons. They didn't just disappear. Science Officer Dalkun report. Admiral, it's the strangest thing. Our initial scans showed over 7 billion humans on the surface. Now we're detecting maybe half that number. The rest seem to have vanished. Vanished? Species don't just vanish. No, sir, but they appear to be relocating underground. We're detecting massive energy signatures beneath the planet's surface, but we can't identify what's generating them. Back in the underground command center, Dr. Soyoung was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most ambitious project. The dimensional gates are fully operational, she announced. We can evacuate the entire remaining surface population to the sanctuary worlds in 6 hours if needed. Sanctuary worlds? Sunho asked again. Kid, you really need to read more classified files, Wu Jin said with a grin. We've been quietly colonizing other planets for 30 years. Had to keep it secret, though. Couldn't let the neighbors know we weren't as helpless as we looked. The preparation wasn't just military. In facilities around the world, humanity was demonstrating the kind of coordination that should have been impossible. Resources were being moved through underground transport systems that could move a tank from New York to Tokyo in 20 minutes. Information was flowing through quantum communication networks that worked faster than light itself. Captain Minho burst into the command center with an update. Sir, long-range sensors show the aliens are preparing to demonstrate their power. They're charging their main weapon and targeting the moon. Perfect, Wu Jin said, and his smile was not pleasant. That's exactly what we've been waiting for. When they fire on Luna, we show them what Earth is really capable of. The next few hours would be crucial. Humanity had spent 75 years preparing for this moment, ever since the first UFO crash had taught them they weren't alone in the universe. They'd learned from that alien technology, improved it, and built defenses that the galaxy had never seen before. The Kovani Empire expected to find a primitive species begging for mercy. Instead, they were about to discover that Earth's silence hadn't been fear or confusion. It had been patience. The patience of a predator waiting for its prey to make the first move. Time was almost up, and both sides were ready. But only one side knew they were walking into a trap that had been 75 years in the making. The 72-hour deadline had come and gone. Earth still hadn't responded to the ultimatum, and Admiral Yakmor was getting tired of waiting. He'd conquered dozens of worlds, and every single one had either surrendered or fought back by now. This silence was starting to feel like an insult. Enough. Of this primitive defiance, he growled from his command chair. Prepare the Worldbreaker cannon. We'll destroy their moon first. Let them watch their sky change, then see how quiet they remain. His weapons officer began charging the massive weapon that had cracked planets in half. The energy buildup was visible even from Earth. A growing ball of purple light that made the alien flagship look like it was on fire. On the surface, people with telescopes and binoculars could see what was happening. Social media exploded with videos of the alien, weapon charging up. Some people were crying, others were praying, and a few were making jokes because sometimes that's all you can do when facing the impossible. But 3 miles underground, General Wu Jin was watching his tactical display with the calm expression of someone playing chess. They're targeting Luna just like we predicted, reported Colonel Jisu. Perfect. Signal all battle groups. The moment they fire, we spring the trap. Throughout the solar system, space that had appeared empty suddenly wasn't. What the aliens had thought was vacuum was actually filled with human ships, hidden by stealth technology that made them invisible to even the most advanced sensors. Captain Kyungmin commanded the lead destroyer from a bridge that looked nothing, like the spacecraft in movies. The walls seemed to flow like liquid metal, constantly shifting and adapting. His ship wasn't built, it was grown, using technology that humanity had developed from studying crashed alien vessels over the past 75 years. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Good, remember, we're not here to have a fair fight. We're here to end this quickly and make a point. The alien Worldbreaker cannon reached full charge. The purple energy ball was now bright enough to see from Earth without a telescope. Admiral Yakmor gave the order to fire. The beam lanced across space toward Luna, carrying enough energy to shatter a small moon. It was an impressive display of imperial power, designed to terrify primitive species into immediate surrender. It never reached its target. Space itself seemed to tear open around the alien fleet. Human ships emerged from what looked like holes in reality. Not the primitive rockets the Empire expected, but vessels that moved like living things through the void. Their hulls shifted and flowed, adapting to incoming fire before it even arrived. The first human volley wasn't energy beams or missiles. It was something the Kovani had never encountered. Weapons that targeted the spaces between atoms that could pass through normal matter like it didn't exist. The shots went straight through the alien shields as if they were made of air. Impossible! Admiral Yakmor screamed as his flagship's hull began tearing apart around him. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Commander Dahyun piloted humanity's most advanced fighter, her small craft dancing between alien weapons fire, with movements that seemed to defy physics. Her ship wasn't just fast, it was predicting where the enemy would shoot before they even pulled the trigger. That's what you get for broadcasting your tactics for 3 days, she whispered to herself, lining up a shot on the flagship's main reactor. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted exactly 17 minutes. The mighty Kovani First Fleet, which had conquered nearly 50 worlds, was reduced to expanding clouds of debris and radiation. Not a single human ship took significant damage. As the last alien vessel exploded, Captain Kyung-min opened a communication channel that broadcast across every frequency the aliens used. To any Kovani forces receiving this message, His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You came to our system. You threatened our world. You were given the opportunity to leave. Peacefully. That opportunity has expired." The message was recorded and would soon spread throughout the Corvani Empire, carrying with it tactical data that would terrify military analysts. The humans hadn't just won, they demonstrated technology that made Imperial weapons look like stone tools. But the most frightening part wasn't the advanced ships or impossible weapons. It was the coordination. Every human ship had moved like part of a single organism, anticipating not just enemy moves, but each other's responses with perfect precision. It was the kind of unity that should have been impossible for any species. Back. On Earth, people watching the sky saw the brief flashes of light that marked the end of the alien fleet. Most didn't understand what they were seeing, but some amateur astronomers with good equipment realized that the dots of light that had been the alien ships were no longer there. In the underground command center, General Wu Jin was already planning the next phase. "Signal all deep space reconnaissance teams. It's time to visit our new neighbors and explain the new rules." The Corvani Empire had given Earth one warning. Earth had just returned the favor, written in the debris of an entire battle fleet. The message was simple. We are not what you expected, and this is not a game you can win. Phase 2 was about to begin. News of the First Fleet's destruction hit the Corvani Empire like a shockwave. At first, nobody believed it. The official reports claimed that an entire battle group had been wiped out by a primitive species that barely had space travel. It sounded like a bad joke. Empress Dalvera sat in her crystal throne room on Corvani Prime, reading the impossible reports. Around her, military advisors and nobles whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of what they were hearing. "This is clearly a mistake in the data transmission," declared General Kextar, the Empire's most decorated military leader. "Primitive species don't destroy Imperial fleets. It's physically impossible." "Then explain the silence," the Empress said coldly. "Admiral Yakmor's flagship hasn't responded to any communications for 6 hours. Equipment malfunction, solar interference. There are dozens of possible explanations that don't involve impossible human technology." The Empress wasn't convinced, but the pressure from her military leaders was intense. The Empire's reputation was built on the idea that they were unbeatable. If word spread that humans had defeated them, it could spark rebellions across dozens of worlds. "Send the third battle. Group to investigate," she ordered, "and make sure they're prepared for unexpected resistance." What the Empress didn't know was that human ships were already watching this conversation happen. Intelligence Officer Seo Jin sat in a monitoring station that technically didn't exist, buried under what appeared to be a small farm in Kansas. His screens showed real-time feeds from inside the alien palace. "They're sending another fleet," he reported to his superiors, 3 times the size of the first one. Admiral Jiho reviewed the intelligence from his command center under the Pacific Ocean. "Good. The more ships they send, the bigger the message we'll send back to the rest of the galaxy." But humanity's strategy wasn't just about winning battles. It was about something much more sophisticated. Captain Nyan was coordinating what Earth Command called diplomatic reconnaissance, though diplomacy wasn't quite the right word for what they were doing. Human ships had begun appearing throughout Corvani space, not to attack but to observe. They would materialize in a system, scan everything in sight and vanish before local forces could respond. But they left behind something that terrified Imperial commanders more than any weapon: the knowledge that humans could appear anywhere, anytime, completely undetected. On the frontier world of Tevlon, Governor Morketh was reviewing security reports when his aide burst into the office. "Governor, there's been another sighting." "Where this time?" "Right outside the orbital defense platform. A human ship just appeared. It scanned our entire defensive grid, downloaded our communication protocols, and disappeared." Morketh felt his blood turn cold. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were learning everything about Imperial technology, tactics, and weaknesses. It was like being studied by a predator that was taking its time deciding when to strike. Similar reports were flooding in from across the Empire. human ships appearing in the most secure systems, near the most protected installations, gathering intelligence with impossible ease. What made it worse was that the humans seemed to be sharing their information with other species. Dr. Hanul was coordinating what Earth called the Liberation Network from a facility that appeared to be a small research station in Antarctica. Her job was to contact other species that had been conquered by the Corvani and offer them something they'd never had before: hope. "The Zelani Republic wants to join our alliance," she reported during a strategy meeting. "They're offering to provide intelligence on Imperial supply lines in exchange for protection." "What about the Tethys colonies?" asked Admiral Jiho. "Already signed. Turns out they've been planning a rebellion for decades. They just needed someone strong enough to back them up." The third battle group arrived at Earth 2 weeks after the first fleet's destruction. They found no trace of the previous ships, just empty space where a battle should have left debris. Commander Velmoth, leading the investigation, was beginning to understand why his predecessor had gone silent. "Sir," his sensor operator reported, "we're detecting the same energy signatures that were in the previous reports, but they're everywhere. It's like space itself is watching us." Velmoth was right to be worried. Humanity had learned something important from studying captured Corvani technology. Imperial sensors had blind spots. Human ships could hide in those blind spots, moving through space like ghosts. The second battle lasted 8 minutes. This time, human forces didn't just destroy the Imperial ships. They captured several intact vessels and their crews. The survivors were given a simple message to take back to their empire: "Your technology is obsolete. Your tactics are predictable. Your empire exists only because we choose to let it exist. This can change at any time." But the real psychological warfare was just beginning. Imperial colonies started reporting strange incidents. Entire garrison forces would vanish overnight, leaving their equipment untouched, but the soldiers gone without a trace. Supply convoys would arrive at their destinations empty, with no sign of attack or theft. The most unsettling reports came from Imperial intelligence services. Human agents seemed to be everywhere, somehow infiltrating even the most secure facilities. They weren't stealing military secrets. They were leaving messages in perfect Corvani script that said the same thing everywhere: "You had your warning." Within a month, the mighty Corvani Empire was experiencing something it had never faced in its 1,000-year history: fear. Fear of an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Fear of a species that seemed to know everything about them while remaining completely mysterious themselves. The hunt had begun, and humanity was the hunter. 6 months after the Corvani Empire had threatened to destroy Earth, that same empire no longer existed, not because it had been conquered in some massive space battle, but because it had simply become irrelevant overnight. President Minjay stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. The massive assembly hall on the space station New Geneva housed representatives from over 800 different worlds. What had once been the Corvani Empire was now the Terran Federation, and the change had happened so smoothly that most people were still trying to figure out how. "6 months ago we were given an ultimatum," Minjay began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall through translation devices that worked better than anything the old empire had ever built. "Today we welcome our former enemies as equal, partners in building a better galaxy." In the audience, former Empress Dalvera sat quietly among the other delegates. She wasn't wearing chains or sitting in a prisoner's dock. She was there as the elected representative of Corvani Prime, which had voted to join the Federation 3 months earlier. The transition had been so peaceful that many of her own people had forgotten they used to rule half the galaxy. It had all started with simple economics. When human ships began appearing in every system, they didn't come with weapons drawn. They came with trade offers, technology that was decades ahead of anything the Empire had, medical treatments that could cure diseases that had plagued entire species for generations, energy sources that were clean, unlimited, and practically free. Director Somin of the Galactic Integration Office had explained the strategy during one of the early planning meetings. Why destroy an empire when you can? Make it obsolete? Give people something better, and they'll abandon the old system on their own. The plan had worked perfectly. When Imperial worlds were offered Federation membership, they didn't see it as surrender. They saw it as an upgrade. Better technology, better living conditions, better opportunities. Most importantly, they saw protection from an enemy that had proven it could defeat the mighty Empire without breaking a sweat. Commander Jinwu, now wearing the insignia of Federation High Command, often looked back on those early days with amazement. "We always knew this day would come," he told new recruits during training sessions. "We just didn't know it would happen so peacefully." The truth was, humanity had been preparing for galactic contact since 1947, when the first crashed alien ship had taught them they weren't alone, but instead of preparing just for war, they'd prepared for everything. They'd studied alien psychology, learned dozens of languages, and developed technology that could solve the problems that plagued most civilizations. When the Corvani had finally arrived with their ultimatum, Earth had been ready with something the Empire never expected: solutions. The few Imperial holdouts who refused to join the Federation quickly discovered they were living in the past. Their technology stopped working as human improvements became the galactic standard. Their trade routes dried up as other species chose Federation alternatives. Their colonies emptied as their own citizens applied for Federation citizenship. Dr. Hyejin, now head of the Federation Science Council, had made the old Imperial Technology Museum's pieces almost overnight. "It's not that we destroyed their capabilities," she explained to a group of visiting students. "We just made them unnecessary. Why use weapons that can destroy planets when you have technology that can move entire populations to better worlds?" The most impressive part wasn't the technology. It was the coordination. Humanity had somehow managed to organize hundreds of different species, each with their own cultures and needs, into a functioning democracy. It should have been impossible, but it worked because humans had done something the Empire never tried. They listened. Captain Naeon, now serving as Federation Diplomatic Corps leader, spent her days helping former Imperial species adjust to their new reality. "The Empire ruled through fear," she explained to a group of former Imperial governors. "We prefer cooperation. It's amazing what people can accomplish when they're working together, instead of being forced to obey." What nobody outside Earth's leadership knew was that humanity hadn't been alone on their planet. For decades, they'd been secretly protecting and nurturing dozens of younger civilizations that had crash-landed or sought refuge on Earth. When the Federation was formed, these species became founding members, giving humanity allies who understood their methods from the beginning. Former Empress Dalvera often thought about the moment her empire had given Earth that ultimatum. She'd expected the usual response: fear, desperation, maybe a few token resistance attempts before inevitable surrender. Instead, she'd encountered something that had never existed in galactic history: a species that treated a superpower's threat as an opportunity to demonstrate why cooperation was better than conquest. "We gave them one warning," she often told people who asked about those final days of the Empire. "They gave us something better. They gave us a choice: join willingly or become irrelevant." Most of us chose to join. The galaxy was finally at peace, not because one side had defeated the other, but because humanity had shown everyone a better way to live. It had all started with an ultimatum that was meant to terrify Earth into submission. Instead, it had become the first step toward the most successful civilization the galaxy had ever seen. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make everyone realize the war was unnecessary in the first place.